By way of background, the term glycobiology actually got coined by Raymond Dweck back in the 1980s, mid 1980s. And it came about out of a growing interest in the effects of glycans in biology. You know, there was actually a role for these things. They weren't just sugars in your coffee. Um, Somewhere in the late 1990s, NSF put together a group to actually look at glycobiology, and they came out with a white paper at the end of 1990, which NIH picked up on. At that point, we were in the doubling, and a new program, the Blue Grant program, was coming about. And NIH used this to move forward the white paper from NSF. It was a $110 million program, thereabouts, over 10 years, to establish the infrastructure for glycobiology in the US. Um, this was a huge success, and it set up several major effects. One is it was an experiment in large team science, and it really drove the idea that we could move forward much faster in science if we had large teams that were working together. And it was based on open access to all the data. It was a unified open notebook. Um, all of the resources that went into this program went into cores that produced reagents, services, new technologies, and something like, by the end, 500 investigators from around the world were using these cores, and all the data was going into a unified notebook and databases that anybody could mine. So it really set a precedent for large team science and open access. That program and the success of that program led the national academies to take a look at the field of glycoscience. And in 2000, as that program ended in 2012, the National Academy came out with its report. Um, and they set out a roadmap, a 15-year roadmap, to actually integrate glycosciences with the rest of the scientific community, because glycoscience essentially impinges upon all other sciences. It's the most abundant post-translational modification in all cells. Europe picked up on this, and they also came out with their own roadmap in glycosciences. So this is an international program. It's across all the continents, and it has huge implications in terms of actually being able to develop new approaches to therapeutics. So with that as a background, the Society for Glycobiology was essentially being run out of somebody's back pocket, out of their lab, and there was a small group of people that were involved in this, and the meetings were small, and it was about 60 core members. I think all of them were in my portfolio. Uh, they each took turns sort of running the meeting every year. Um, Howard Garrison was sitting on NIGMS's council, and Hud Freeze was very involved in the society at that point, and he was also one of my grantees. And as the National Academy report came out and the movement of the field from the consortium from functional glycomics was really sort of gaining a headway, I had a discussion with Hud and with Howard and said, Hud, you really need to talk to Howard. Howard, you really need to talk to Hud. Society should be part of FASA. And they got together, they talked about it. I'd brought it to the society, and the society said, yes, we need to join FASA. So that's how the society became part of FASA. What does the society do? Well, our purpose is to increase awareness among board members of the needs of member societies and the information that's included. Here's our objectives: promote knowledge, encourage research, stimulate personal communication in an interdisciplinary sense, using as the common meeting ground our interest in polysaccharides, glycoproteins, glycolipids, glycosaminoglycans, and the biological systems that they're found. So these are protein carbohydrate interactions, they're signaling molecules. They carry out a number of effector functions in the body. The society has moved forward quite well since it joined FASEB, sort of brought us to the table and made us step up and pay attention to things and not just run an annual meeting, but actually get much more involved in what we needed to do to build the membership. So the society's developed official statements on scientists for peace, social equality, diversity, equity, and inclusion, a code of conduct statements, and these can all be viewed on our website. Who are our members? Last year we had about 500 members. We're making a concerted effort in trying to get this up to 600 members this year. That's one of our goals. The bulk of our members are basic scientists. There's no training programs. There up until about 5 years ago, there were no NIH or NSF supported training programs in glycoscience. People in this field backed into it because their research took them into it and they had to learn glycoscience to be able to move their research forward. So we cover a lot of basic science. We have a few MDs, but most everybody is a basic scientist. Some people are in industry, but most of our people are in academia. And they cover everybody from trainees to early career investigators, established professors, and it's an international group. It's heavily international. Given the paucity of training programs in glycoscience, most of the society's members moved into this field from other research areas, and we've been pushing hard to try to get formal training and actually start to develop a cadre of people that are trained truly in glycoscience. So some of the members have made extraordinary efforts to develop a textbook, which is now online at the National Library of Medicine. Anybody can use this textbook if they want to teach glycoscience or learn about glycoscience. I think the 4th edition just came out. And we were able to convince NIH, 2 institutes, NIGMS and Heart-Lung, that we needed training programs. So Heart-Lung has put together a program called K-12 program, and that's a multi-institutional training program in glycoscience. And GM is using its T32 programs in chemical biology, and we have a T32 program in Georgia. These are the first true training programs funded by the federal government in glycoscience, and they're about 5 years into their training. We're hoping to recruit these people into academia and into the society, and I'm actually giving a talk at the end of the month to the trainees in these programs about where the field is going and to encourage them to join the society. Hopefully we can get up to that 600 members. The society has been very active in FASEB. I'm on the board. Nancy Doms is one of the executive officers on the advisory committee. Natasha Zakara, Pam Stanley, Hud Freeze, of course, Chris West, Raul Asta, and Jerry Hart and Pam Stanley, again, are on multiple boards and activities within FASEB. National and international outreach. The society shares research interests with just about everybody, but especially with immunology, virology, the microbiome, microbiology, cancer, neurobiology, the carbohydrate chemists, the American Chemical Society Carbohydrate Chemistry Division just expanded its name to the Carbohydrate Chemistry and Glycosciences Division. I sit on their executive committee. Vaccines, rare diseases, informatics, cell signaling, you name it, things are mediated by carbohydrates in these fields. And we partner with several societies like ASBMB. We have a meeting coming up next month on Oglicnac, AAI. We've sponsored sessions at their meetings, and of course the Consortium for Functional Glycomics, which has a satellite session with our meeting every year. So these are joint sessions at our meeting or other meetings. The society is a sponsor of the ASBMB's Oglicnac regulation meeting in July, and we host the Consortium for Functional Glycomics, and this year we're also going to host the K-12 training program in glycobiology as a satellite session to our annual meeting. We have a new agreement for exchange of scientific sessions with the International Glycoconjugate Organization. So we'll have a session at their meeting and they'll have a session at ours. Our current priorities, we need to build a cadre of well-trained people in this field. So we've added a mentoring program at our meetings where we're able to work with trainees that attend and try to help them to develop their careers, point them in the right directions, point them to the right people, give them mentors, give them information. This year we're adding a session. It's difficult in an emerging area of science, especially one this broad, because your grantees go every place. They go to lots and lots and lots of different study sections, and they might be the only person in a study section who's working in glycoscience. So having appropriate expertise on that study section for your grant is really difficult. And this is something that we've struggled with, and we've tried to work with CSR to assure that they have appropriate expertise in their review panels to look at our grants. So this year we're actually setting up a session where we're bringing in program officers from various institutes who have interest in glycoscience, including AI and DK and cancer and GM, and members of CSR. And we're going to have this panel at the meeting where each of the institutes will talk about their interests, CSR will talk about review processes, and we'll give members of the society an opportunity to ask them all questions. We've also formed an education committee, and the goal of this committee, which I'm on, is to develop resources online for people who want to teach glycoscience. One of the key parts of the roadmap from the National Academy was that we need to educate people in glycoscience all the way from undergraduates through graduate students. And since there's no training programs, or since there's not a critical mass of individuals who can teach glycoscience at a given institution, what we're trying to do is to put resources online. So we're developing course materials where you can go in and watch a YouTube video. Your lab is now working on antibodies, and you find out they're glycosylated, and that the glycosylation on your antibody tunes the effector function. So you need to understand glycosylation. So you can go in and watch a video about this. We're hoping to get these online this year. Our recent successes, the pandemic forced the society to go into virtual meetings, and this has really opened up our ability to bring in people worldwide. And we've partnered with other organizations internationally, with Europe and with Canada, to be able to take part in seminar series. And we partner senior people with junior people, so you get 2 talks at a time, with a discussion afterwards. But last November, we decided to take the plunge and have our annual meeting in San Diego. We weren't sure how many people were actually going to show up, but we were pleasantly surprised that we had a really strong turnout. And most of the people that turned out were young folks who really needed to be able to be at a meeting and to talk to people and interact and network. So we had a really excellent turnout in terms of, trainees and early investigators, mid-career investigators. And we did this in a hybrid method so that people could also, if they didn't want to travel, they could take part in the meeting through the internet. And that gave us a much larger attendance than we usually have at a meeting. So combined, it was actually very good. In person, it was about where we expected it to be under normal circumstances, maybe just a little bit lower. Our biggest challenges, we need to expand the membership, and we need to raise awareness of the impact of the field, especially with grant review panels. And of course, we need to get education in place. How can FASA better support us? Opportunities for collaborative meetings with other societies who share interests. We're always open to that, and we're always looking for opportunities to partner. Um, we need advocates at your institutions. Do people do glycoscience? Probably, most likely. Do they recognize it as glycoscience? Probably not. Um, but could they benefit from having glycoscience resources and tools and being made aware of these things? Most definitely, and we're happy to help. Um, we need to continue to actively engage NIH to ensure a smooth transition to compliance with new rules on research data, the availability and storage. So we're hoping FASEB helps us with that. And we need to continue FASEB's monthly information and resource support for our leadership exchange. Our leadership exchange, that the folks that sit in on that from FASEB with FASEB are very excited about it. They find a lot of worth in it, and they really appreciate talking to the other member societies. And we'd like more resources like DataWorks to help the society deal with new requirements from funding agencies. And we and other small societies always need help with setting up meetings. So anything that FASEB can do in that regard, we'd accept with open arms. We benefit because it gives the society visibility. As an emerging area of science with a small cadre of investigators and our first training programs, being a member of FASEB has given us sort of an imprimatur to go out and try to get training programs for our members. It gives us credibility as a real defined area of science. And it gives us opportunities with the other societies with shared interests and common goals, as well as valuable information and resources. So we appreciate that very much from FASA. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Pam. I think if anyone has any questions or comments for Pam, we should make it, when we get together on break times during the last couple of sessions. But thank you, Pam, for a very comprehensive overview.